Bastila was sitting in the living room when he got home, watching holovids while she waited for him to return. Revan wondered if she'd been waiting long. He hadn't told her where he was going, and he hadn't told her about sending Canderous off to investigate the Mandalorians. He just hadn't seen any point in worrying her if there was nothing she could do to help. Now that they had a plan, however, he was eager to share it with her. He just had to be careful how he explained it all.
"Sorry, I didn't know I'd be so late,"
he said as he crossed the room and bent down to give her a kiss.
"You shouldn't have waited up."
"That's okay,"
she said, taking his hand and pulling him down onto the couch beside her.
"I couldn't sleep."
Still holding his hand, she turned to face him.
"I've got something to tell you,"
she said.
"Me too. Big news."
"I bet mine is bigger,"
she said with a faint smile.
"That's a bet you'd lose,"
he warned her.
"I'm pregnant."
Revan was stunned into silence for several long seconds. When he finally managed to speak, all he could say was,
"Okay, you win."
Revan couldn't believe he hadn't noticed Bastila's pregnancy earlier. Though there were no visible physical signs of her condition, it should have been obvious. The instant she'd told him, he'd clearly sensed the life growing inside her through the Force.
"I must be getting senile in my old age,"
he said, caressing her still flat belly.
"You've had a lot on your mind,"
Bastila reminded him.
"and you haven't been sleeping much."
It was still too early to tell if it was a boy or a girl, but it didn't matter to Revan either way. He and Bastila were going to have a child. It was the happiest day of his life. There was just one small problem.
"Talk about bad timing,"
Bastila murmured, echoing his own sentiments. Once he'd gotten over the joyful shock of her news, he told her about his meeting with Canderous.
"I have to do this,"
he said softly.
"It's the only way I'm ever going to find out what that vision actually means."
"What if you don't find out?"
Bastila countered.
"Your nightmares are fading. Maybe in a few months they'll stop."
"Maybe,"
he agreed, though he didn't believe it.
"but I think these are more than just old memories bubbling up. They're a warning. Even if the visions stop, the threat they represent would still be out there."
"Haven't you done enough already?"
Bastila asked, her voice rising slightly.
"You saved the Republic from the Mandalorians. You saved the Republic from Malak. And in return you had your identity destroyed and were ostracized by the Council."
She pulled away from him, her anger building.
"You don't owe them anything anymore. You've paid for your mistakes. You've sacrificed enough. You've earned the right to live out your days in peace."
"If I don't do something, nobody else will,"
he said, shaking his head.
"So what? So nobody does anything. Whatever evil's lurking in the unknown regions might not show itself for decades. We could both be old and grey by then. We have a chance to live out our entire lives in perfect happiness. Are you willing to risk throwing all that away?"
It was tempting to give in. It would be easy to pretend nothing was wrong and just live in blissful ignorance like trillions of other beings in the galaxy. There was only one problem with her argument.
"I'm not doing this for the Republic,"
he explained.
"I'm not doing it for you. I'm not even doing it for me. I'm doing it for our child and our child's children. We might never live to see the horrors that are coming, but they will."
He tightened his arm around her.
"We have to protect the Republic for them. We have to risk our chance at happiness so they can have a life we might never know."
Bastila didn't answer. Instead, she leaned against him, resting her head on his shoulder, and he knew she felt the same way.
"When do we leave?"
she asked after a long moment of silence.
"You can't come with me,"
Revan objected gently.
"What if I find something on Rekiad? Some clue connected to my past? What if it leads me farther into the Outer Rim? Or even the unknown regions? We could be gone for months, maybe longer. Do you really want to give birth on some uninhabited world on the edges of the galaxy? And then what will we do? How are we going to care for an infant under those conditions? I won't risk the life of our child like that. And I know you won't either."
Bastila reached 2 fingers up and pressed them gently against Revan's lips.
"If I say you're right, will you please shut up?"
He nodded silently.
"Because I can think of better things to do on the last night before you leave than talking."
Revan couldn't have agreed with her more. Bastila accompanied Revan and T3 to the spaceport. Canderous was already there, loading supplies onto the Ebon Hawk. The Ebon Hawk had served Revan well during his hunt for Darth Malak. Owned by a succession of smugglers and pirates, it was one of the fastest ships in the galaxy. It had enough room to comfortably accommodate a crew of 8, with cargo and supplies. Yet a single individual could pilot it when necessary. Technically speaking, the Ebenhawk still belonged to Davik Kang, a Teresian crime lord. But Davik wouldn't be coming to reclaim it. He was long dead, his body buried beneath the ruins of Taris when Malak bombed the city world from orbit.
Be careful out there,
Bastila said.
I always am,
he answered with a smile, wiping a single tear from the corner of her eye. They didn't need to say anything else. They'd said their true goodbyes in private the previous night. Bastila's years of Jedi training had left her uncomfortable with public displays of emotion, but she stood up on her toes and planted a long, hard kiss on Revan's lips. Then she turned away and quickly left the spaceport. Canderous raised a curious eyebrow, but showed enough restraint not to ask why she wasn't coming. They finished loading the ship in silence. 20 minutes later, the Ebenhawk took flight,